and an insane qualifying session for the Spanish Grand Prix. You know, Max Verstappen getting first position, but that really was not the shocking and exciting part of this qualifying session. In the first Q1 session, Charles Leclerc at Ferrari, after all the upgrades, after all the promises of finding a new way in Spain, gets knocked out in 19th position. It just goes from one nightmare to the next, not just for Ferrari, but specifically for Charles Leclerc, a guy who is actually on the level of a Max Verstappen and the other top drivers in Formula One. It seemed that there was an issue with the car or the engine over the radio. He said something wasn't feeling right and there seemed to be an issue, but they were not able to figure it out. Logan Sargent 20th, Albon 18th in the Williams, no surprise there. Kevin Magnussen 17th, Bottas 16th, you know, all those guys knocked out. So we go on to Q2. And some shockers here. Sergio Perez, he nearly beached it onto the gravel. He went wide and was able to get out of it, but just did not have the pace. This is not the bounce back we thought we could see where he could actually fight for the championship. He just seems like he can't put it together. After he makes one mistake, he keeps doubling down on mistakes. It might be a mental factor at this point, but Perez is not really showing us that there will be any challenge for Verstappen in the championship, qualifying 11th. George Russell, qualifying 12th. That new Mercedes setup, I really think, is better for Hamilton than him. It is a conspiracy to a degree, but I think the bad results for Hamilton, a man who's ingrained in that team, who's created so much success, I think it actually would make more sense that they build a car around him. And a lot of people would say, no, well, they always go with the number one driver. They always build a car around him. There are certain circumstances that are extenuating factors that would imagine me to believe that Mercedes would actually want to give a better car to Hamilton than Russell, and that he's an important key figure in the team overall. Oscar Piastri qualifying 10th. That was pretty good for McLaren. But guess what? Lando Norris qualified 3rd. The McLarens are so much faster. We did not see this in practice leading up to this point this weekend. The McLarens have found a new way. Their car is much faster. Now, we said the Alpines were kind of figuring out their car ever since the season started because they've had such a dreadful time in the way back area. But McLaren, for as bad as Alpine was, were 10 times worse. I mean, they were usually down in the 15th to 20th position, not in just qualifying, but in most of the races. And now you have Lando Norris coming in 3rd, half a second off Verstappen. Carlos Sainz getting 2nd. You know, Carlos Sainz is a weird one because for the amount of mistakes he makes, when Leclerc does something that leaves him out of contention for qualifying and possibly a race victory or a podium, for whatever reason, that makes Carlos Sainz better. Maybe it's not having the stress of actually having to fight a teammate and just focusing on himself. It might be a mental aspect. But every time Leclerc seems to mess up big time, Carlos Sainz seems to come in and grab a much better position. But you know how he is in races compared to qualifying. You had Pierre Gasly in 4th. They are reviewing an incident where he was impeding a car, and he might be dropped down due to a penalty. We'll have to see. Lewis Hamilton in 5th for Mercedes. There was a point where it looked like he could get in 2nd or 3rd in qualifying, but just wasn't able to put it together. But it does seem like the Mercedes is slightly better. It's getting back to the point where it was last season, where it was fighting for 4th and 5th and possibly a podium. Lance Stroll changing everything up, coming in 6th. That's a great result considering how terrible he's been the last 2 weekends in Formula One. So very much back on pace. Ocon 7th. Again, the Alpines doing well. Nico Hülkenberg for the Haas team. He doesn't seem to finish well, but he does qualify well, getting in 8th position, and then followed by Fernando Alonso in 9th, and as I already mentioned, Oscar Piastri in 10th. We'll have to see what happens tomorrow. It does seem like a totally dominant force for Verstappen, and since Perez is in 11th, and not even Leclerc is up there in terms of Ferrari, and Fernando didn't qualify that well, this seems to be a race where he could run away, unless Carlos Sainz really has some balls and goes for it on the front straight tomorrow on the start. Lando Norris, he'll be lucky if he can maintain, a top 8 position. Maybe the car's fast enough to do that, but this was qualifying alone, and we'll have to see. I'd imagine the Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton be able to get up there. He won't be fighting with so many Ferraris and Red Bulls at this time. And Lance Stroll, can he create some sort of result? We know that Aston Martin's fast. Can he get up there and maybe get a podium? We'll have to see. But check in tomorrow.